Hey guys, before we start this episode, I wanted to talk to you about Type 1 Lifting. So, Type 1 Lifting is a clothing line that proceeds of the shirts and tanks and everything else goes to the Children's Diabetes Foundation. This all came about with me and seeing a 5-year-old girl in the emergency department that had new onset of diabetes. Just take a look at the website. It's www.type1lifting.com. So just check it out. If you don't buy anything, that's perfectly fine. I would just like for you just to take a look and just see what we have. So, like I said before, www.type1lifting.com. And guys, I hope you enjoy the show. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Type 1 Lifting Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I have a great guest. You know, he's one of the busiest diabetics I know. So his name's Rob Howe. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man, and thanks for having me. I think the way that me and my team are talking about it now is that I'm the hardest working guy in diabetes. That's like what we're manifesting. So we're taking away busy and just throwing it to hard working.
All right, I'll take hard working. Well, it's nice to finally get the chance to talk to you. You know, especially another tall diabetic, because I'm 6'6", and so I don't really see too many tall diabetics, and it's nice to actually talk to another one.
Yeah, it's funny. So you and me, and then Derek Thieler is also like 6'6", 6'7", and Matt Vandevecht is like 6'5", 6'6", the FTF warrior. So a lot of tall drinks of water around here.
So, quick question. So when did you become a diabetic?
I was diagnosed on January 1st, 2005, and I was 16 years old. So coming up on 17 years, man, pretty wild.
Wow.
16 years.
Yeah. That's crazy. So how did you find out you were diabetic?
So I was playing basketball, and I was losing weight. I had frequent urination, the usual symptoms. And at the time, so like I walk around like 230 now. My basketball playing weight in college was like 220, and I was like 155. So I was like 6'5", 155.
Dang.
So very skinny. And I was down about 20 pounds, and I remember I started feeling weird. I wasn't feeling right. And then I noticed I was going to the bathroom a lot. So I started keeping track. And on New Year's Eve, I went to this like lock-in kind of thing at the mall with like a bunch of my friends. And I remember counting, I peed 27 times that night.
Jeez.
And I just remember every time I peed, I would be like the most thirsty I've ever been. And then I would like drink water. So I'm an athlete, and I'm like thinking in the back of my mind, like, man, my coach is going to be psyched. Like, I'm just drinking all this water. I'm like really hydrated. Like, I'm clearly like just doing all the right stuff. And then the next morning I woke up and I was nauseous. And so I like threw up, and my mom was like, God, something's wrong with you. So we're going to take you to urgent care. And when I did that, they were like, listen to my symptoms, and they were like, let's check your blood sugar. And they checked it, and they were like, hey, you got to go to the emergency room. You definitely have type 1 diabetes, so you need to head on out of here. And so from the urgent care to the hospital where I was diagnosed was about 25 minutes away. And so it was like raining, and I didn't really get any information there. They were just like, hey, we've called the emergency room, like, go ahead. Mm-hmm. So I just remember like the postal service was on the radio, and it was like raining, and like the windshield wipers. It's like this really sad emo moment because we didn't really know what was going to happen and what this meant for my life. So when we got there, I had this awesome endocrine care team. And they told me from day one, like, as long as I took care of my diabetes, that I could do whatever it is I wanted to do. And so that was kind of all I needed. And I think at the time, I didn't realize how important that was for me to hear, because as you know, interviewing a lot of people with diabetes, not everybody has that diagnosis story. So,
yeah.
I was just glad that, not only did my endocrine care team give me the right tools and the right encouragement, my parents were there. I was very fortunate to have both my parents really involved in my life and very supportive of what I wanted to do. And I don't know, I'm just very blessed, man.
Yeah. So does anybody in your family have diabetes, or is it just pretty much just you?
So as far as I know, man, I'm the only one. Obviously prior to 100 years ago, I mean, it could have been anybody, right? There could be some way back because they could have just died and not really known. but yeah, as far as I know, in my entire extended family, I'm the only one.
Okay, yeah, same here. So like I didn't get diagnosed at 16, but mine's like later on at like 35. So
Yep.
it was like, and I remember that day vividly. So yeah, I don't think like your day of being diagnosed, you'll like never forget it, especially the numbers that you see too. So
Man, yeah, I think my blood sugar was I wasn't in DKA, which I'm grateful for. That was really good, really lucky and fortunate for me. My blood sugar I think was 425 or something like that.
yeah,
But it's funny looking back. My mom, when I like threw up and like was nauseous, she gave me a Dr. Pepper to calm my stomach down because that's what you do. And so like that for sure set me way up. So the doc said based on my A1C, I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly what it was, but that my average blood sugar is probably in the low 200s for quite a while.
yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. So when you were playing sports, especially in high school, like did you get pretty much like how did your team and coaches and parents manage you with playing sports in high school?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my first varsity double-double, I had like 13 points and 11 rebounds, was my first game back from when I got diagnosed. And obviously, like I just felt way better. I could just move good. I like lost a little weight, so I was a little bit more bouncy too. It was kind of funny. But I felt strong. I felt energetic. I just felt so good, which was something that I hadn't really noticed was going on. But clearly, like I just had a lot more energy. And over the next 2 years, my parents honestly trusted me. And looking back now, I went to sleepaway basketball camps that summer, like less than 6 months in. My parents were cool with me going. We always talked to the camp ahead of time. They were very confident that I knew what I was doing. But they gave me the autonomy to go do that. They knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a basketball player. And in order for me to do that, I was going to have to go away and play. And I'm very fortunate that my parents gave me the opportunity to do that. So in high school, I was on multiple daily injections. I had no CGM. I just checked my blood sugar a lot. And I was kind of also honeymooning for sure.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really until maybe after I graduated high school, like 2 years in, that diabetes management became a little bit more difficult for me, especially going into the college basketball environment, which was much more strenuous. And I wasn't really ready for that. But, I think that was not just diabetes. That was just a combination of kind of growing up and going to a new place and taking a step up in a sport by going up a level. And that was kind of an adjustment period. But yeah, the first few years, I really, I played a lot of summer ball, traveled a lot, and had a few games like where diabetes really got in the way, like on some road trips. And, but at the same time was able to go do what I wanted to do. And, I'm very grateful that, again, I had the support team and the parents and the coaching staffs. Like they would ask some questions every now and then, but they would leave me alone about it for the most part. So
That's awesome.
As long as I felt like I was good, they were cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So leading into you going to college, so how did the coaching staff and like personal training staff like handle you? Because they probably may have dealt with a diabetic before, but obviously different diabetics, different cases. So how did they handle you?
So I was the first one for all of them.
Okay.
But during the recruiting process, my parents and I made the decision, and looking back, like very important, but we made the conscious decision to be upfront about maybe we're going to hide it. It's because I was going to a place where I was going to have to spend 4 years, and we wanted them to know like what they were getting into. We didn't feel the need to like oversell me or anything. So, had the conversation with my coach. My narrative was basically like, hey, I have this, but it's not stopping me from doing anything. So if I have a problem, I'll let you know. And same thing with the training staff. As I kind of got through, I switched from multiple daily injections to a pump my junior year of college. And every 2 years at my school, because it was a master's program for our training staff, I got a new trainer. So I think I had 3 trainers total. And one of them actually, I talked to my trainer for my senior year, John Michael, who was one of my closer friends, who was also a trainer. He now coaches at a high school in Memphis, and he had like 3 type 1 girl soccer players over the years. And he's like always uses me as an example. And he's like now I can just send them to their moms to your Instagram and be like, hey, like this guy, I coached or I helped this guy in college. So like, this is how I learned to handle diabetic athletes. And he's like, it's amazing how many of them are like, oh yeah, I went and listened to the podcast. And I was like, oh dude, thanks for plugging me. And I just think it's interesting how that all works out. So I was the first one for all of them, but they've all since had experience with other diabetic athletes.
Yeah. So when were they super nervous, like training with you at all, or what was their like train of thought while they were like taking care of you?
They actually, I give them all a lot of credit, and I don't know if this is just my personality, but I'm very independent, and I don't like extra maintenance or extra attention on myself. Not even related to diabetes, just like I don't want to feel like a burden. That's probably like most of my anxiety is from that, but. They honestly worked with me. So I had my trainer, my sophomore and junior year, she and I went through like the biggest hurdles together because we changed therapies. So we had to adjust to, life without basal insulin, and like going to a pump. And I had never done that before. She had never done that before. So we did a lot of learning, but ultimately, we were just plugged in. Every day I would go in with her, and we would make sure my sugars were good before practice. We had a routine on game day where I would check my blood sugar during the national anthem and inject myself if I needed to, or, take some Gatorade or something. I had to buy my own Gatorades and like keep them on the bench, so, and she would like make sure that no one would steal them because, college athletes are always wanting free stuff. So,
yeah.
It was a learning experience, but and certainly not without its ups and downs. And I really had to change my approach to getting ready for games because cortisol and adrenaline, as I know now, and stress really spike your blood sugar way up. And college basketball games, especially under my coach, were very stressful, very high stress, very high adrenaline style events. And that affected my blood sugar negatively. So I really had to kind of adjust the way I prepared. And sometimes I got it right. Sometimes I didn't. Yeah.
I mean, it's always a learning curve pretty much, I think, dealing with that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm still learning, and I've been a diabetic for 5 years. So it's, always a learning curve. So did you ever in college get like a burnout phase, or in high school? And what was that like? And how did you kind of like try to snap out of that?
I never had a burnout phase the way that you hear people talk about, like not taking care of yourself or, not wanting to be diabetic. But I certainly didn't lean into my identity as a diabetic. I didn't want to be known as a diabetic athlete. I didn't want to be known as a diabetic student. I just wanted to be an athlete. I just wanted to be a student and manage my life. And that was the journey that I went on. I can't change it. But if I had to go back, I would lean a little bit more into talking and being more open about diabetes. There really wasn't a diabetes online community very much then. I was also young and playing basketball. That was my number one priority. So, it was hard for me to adjust to, identifying as that. But, diabetes is a tough disease.
Yep.
It's a disability. It gives you access to things that other people don't have access to through the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I didn't necessarily take advantage of any of those, and maybe I wouldn't have needed to, but it would have been nice for me to be a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit more well-informed, and identifying as hey, I am a person with diabetes. I guess I may have only shared this once before. The first time I was out with my diabetes in a sense where I brought it up was in a class, and a teacher asked a question, and I was like, oh, well, this makes sense to me because I live with diabetes, and this is how I think it was about counting carbs or something. And I applied that to the store, it was a management class. And I was like, well, this is how I do that. So, it's very similar to this. And I remember that day, this guy who I knew and I had seen around and I had worked with before came up to me after class and said, hey man, I didn't know you had diabetes. My cousin has diabetes and he's 13. And I see you playing college basketball. His doctor said that he probably shouldn't run Ironmans, and he loves running Ironmans. Would you be okay to talk to him? And I was like, oh, yeah, man, absolutely. So he sent me an email, and now the story's come back to me. I have told it a couple times, but it's been a while. And he and I exchanged emails, and I was like, hey, man, you can do what you want to do. Obviously, take care of yourself, listen to your doctor, but maybe find a different doctor, work a plan. There are people with diabetes who do this. It's not always easy for me, but I'm doing what I want to do with diabetes. And 6 months went by, and I was living my life, and I had forgotten about it. And I got this email, no subject line, one day. It was just a photo. It was him with a finisher medal
Nice.
at an Ironman race. And I just remember, like, man, like, that really stuck with me. It's still today, like, kind of got chills just now, thinking about, like, what that meant to him. And so years later, when I wanted to do something else with my life rather than just work, work was going well for me. I was just meeting my wife, my now wife. And I was like, I want to do something more than just have a job and die, and I remember something my dad told me, which was I'm always happiest when I'm helping people, and that's true. And I was like, well, who can I help? And I'm sitting there in this hotel, and my insulin pump fell out of my gym shorts, like it does, and clattered on the floor. And I was like, well, this is a sign. Maybe my story can help someone with diabetes. And that was my goal. I was like, try to be the person that I needed when I was diagnosed.
Yeah. So was that the part when you started? That was when you started the podcast at that sketchy, you'd say like the sketchy hotel or something like that, where you couldn't go out at night when you're in a different country.
I was, yeah. So I was in Colombia, and Colombia is beautiful, and the part of Bogota that we were in, I don't speak Spanish, and I'm very tall like you, so I stick out like a sore thumb. And so tourists get robbed because they're in the places that they shouldn't be in, and the neighborhoods can turn pretty quickly. So part of the trip insurance was that I'm not allowed to leave the hotel without my translator.
Yeah.
And so I used that time to try to come up with what I wanted to do. And I had been, working in an agency and learning about podcasts and learning about influencers and bloggers and things. And so I was like, well, maybe there's a chance to try this. And I really loved Instagram. It was still relatively, new at the time. And I thought maybe this is a good place to start. So, like most people do now, like I discovered the diabetes hashtag, and the rest is history.
Yeah, nice. So after playing, you have a career in like college basketball. You actually went pro for a little while. So how did you get noticed by that, and like how did you like let them know like what your like situation was?
Man, good question. How much time do we have? So I think I used to joke a lot, and I still do. Like, the really only reason that I was able to turn pro was because I was stubborn, and I just wanted it super bad. My teammates in college who were better than me were like, they were moved on with their lives. One got married, and one started, working at a great job. And I was like, I had a cool job, and a cool job offer that I ended up taking, but in the back of my mind, I never wanted to know, like, or wonder what if. Like, I knew right then I was 22. I was not getting more athletic. I was not getting in better shape, like, to play basketball. The window was closing, and so I got an agent. I had this coach that I actually still work with, just to kind of tune up my skills from time to time to give me some mental clarity. He and I were working together, and I got into this camp called the Courtside Showcase, which was in Las Vegas. And so I like spent all my money registering and like buying a ticket for this trip. And I was like, you know what? When I got the internship that I was in at USA Boxing, I told them ahead of time, I was like, hey, I had this thing lined up. Like, I need to be able to go out of town for a week. Is that cool? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. And they were cool. They like latched onto my story of wanting to be a basketball player. And so I just trained. The first summer, I just trained every day. And I was like waking up early. I had just gotten dumped. I got broken up with. My college girlfriend broke up with me. And so I was like dealing with a lot of that trauma by pouring myself into my craft, just basketball. I didn't drink for like 8 weeks. And when you're 22 and you don't drink for 8 weeks, it's like a big deal.
Yeah.
So I was in bulletproof shape. I was working with this awesome trainer, Kevin Cronin, who got me ready. And I went to this camp, and I tested the third highest vertical of the camp. I was in great shape. I played really well. And when I got done, I was in like the top 5 players that the agency had ranked at the camp. And they asked me to sign with the agency and then stay another week in Vegas. So I signed the contract. I'm represented by the agency. I'm now a professional basketball player. And the thing I had to do to celebrate was me and my buddy, who also signed, walked, because there was no Uber at the time, walked like a mile, carrying our gear to like a laundromat to wash our clothes in the coin laundry so we had clean clothes for the next week of camp. So very glamorous life. You know what I mean? And absolutely just no money. broke, living on hopes and dreams. And I went to the next camp, which was called the Euro Challenge, which was a little bit of a higher profile camp. Everybody there, like all the guys in the first camp were people who were trying to be pros. Everybody in the next camp was bona fide pros. These are guys who played for money. And it was definitely different, but I played fine. And the agency was pretty, I remember a conversation with one of the lead agents in the company, and they were like, we feel confident that you can play in Europe for a long time. We just got to get you somewhere. And that just didn't happen. It was the year of the NBA lockout. There were no jobs really overseas. So at some point I had signed a contract with a team in Germany, and the team sold and they eliminated their foreign contracts. Mm-hmm. And frankly, there's a lot of guys like you and I, 6'6", hard-working, strong dudes that play basketball over in Germany. They don't need me. So they were like, okay, well, the time came. It's like, okay, well, we got to make a decision. I got to have a job. And USA Boxing offered me a job, which I took. And I told them, I was like, hey, I'm going to continue to try to train. And I found this awesome trainer, Matt Barnett, in Colorado, in Denver. And I would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd go work out with my buddy Kevin Cronin, my guy. I'd go to work from 8 to 5. I'd leave work at 5. I'd drive to Denver, and I'd go train again basketball with some pros who were rehabbing in Denver and my coach, Matt Barnett. And I did that for like 9 months. And then it came time for the camp again the next year, and I did that again. And I played much better. Didn't get any offers still, but then I got an invite to this D-League camp, which I went to and I did okay at. Then I led to another D-League camp, which I met a coach that I knew. I was just networking at this point.
Yeah.
And I got that coach to write me a recommendation. And one of my roommates from my first camp had signed with the Washington Generals. And he messaged me one day or texted me, and he was like, hey, man, I know you're like still trying to play overseas, but this is a good gig, and if you like, I'll introduce you to the GM, and you'll have to take it from there. But I think this would be a good fit for you. And so I was like, man, I'll take anything at this point. I just wanted a foot in the door. I figured if I could just play a year and get back, in good rhythm and meet people, I could get a job. And so I took the job. I ended up doing like 6 months of psych evaluations because they really want to make sure you're not going to freak out when you lose every game.
Yeah.
Which is what happens. And it was a great experience. It didn't last as long as I wanted, but it was better than I was playing in men's league 6 nights a week. I was training every day. I was exhausted. I was working really hard at my job. My car blew up. I had to ride my bike back and forth to work. It's not just my bike. I bought this bike, and then my ex-girlfriend had it, and it was at her house, and their tires were flat. So I hadn't talked to her since we broke up. I had to call her and be like, hey, I need that bike back. And, she gave it to me, and I rolled it down to 7-Eleven, and I pumped it up, and I rode it back and forth to work for 2 weeks. Because I don't know, I was just hell bent on trying to make it happen for myself. And so when it finally did, it was the best thing ever. I finally did it. I got the jersey. I got the photos up on the wall. It didn't last as long as I wanted. Turns out that, a couple of the GMs on the Globetrotter side didn't really like me in the show. And so when it was time to re-up, they were like, no, we're good. And at that point, my body was terrible. I was just hurting all the time. I've been traveling. I've been living nowhere. So I came home, and I was like, you know what? I think my basketball career is probably over. So, but I didn't, I answered the question, right?
Yeah.
What if you tried to be a basketball player? You can do that. And that was good enough for me.
Awesome. That's really cool. I mean, that's some serious dedication right there.
Yeah, and I couldn't have done it without my family support. I couldn't have done it without my work support. Like my friends, when my car blew up, my coworkers at USA Boxing were driving me, they would pick me up at my house and drop me off. I was like the intern, dude. I was everybody was raising me. It was, and cheering for me. And I was working with some of the best athletes in the world at USA Boxing. And I don't know, we should still to this day, some of us had shared that camaraderie of trying to make it. Mm-hmm. And especially when nobody believes in you. And it was a smart bet to not believe me. Believe me. People, if you said, Rob, dude, you're never going to make it, you were probably right. But I was so hell-bent on proving those people wrong just for myself.
Yeah.
That I think that's what made it happen for me, honestly.
Awesome. Very cool. So now since your career in basketball's over, what's your fitness like now? What do you typically do on a day-to-day basis, or do you take a couple days off here and there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm old school, so I'm 32 now, so I come from that, like, very bro science on one side, and now I'm like, kind of in the new wave a little bit of, mobility and strength. And so I train typically 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I play like active recovery or something on the weekend. Before COVID, I was playing basketball 2 or 3 times a week still, because that's my favorite thing. I love competing. Even in the back of my mind, when I like really give somebody buckets, and I have my pump on me, it makes me feel good. I'm like, you don't even have a pump to worry about, and I'm crushing you right now. So that's fun for me, I think, competitively, and you just don't get that type of like competitiveness in like the business world as much.
Yeah.
But then I do a lot of strength work. I really love lifting weights. We have a Peloton as well, which I like to do. It's really fun, has great programming, but I like moving heavy things around, and I've really worked on my hip mobility and my explosiveness. My buddy, who was an intern with me at the U.S. Olympic Committee, Corey Schlesinger, he's Slesh Strength on Instagram. He's an amazing trainer. He's the head athletic trainer, or the head strength coach, rather, for the Phoenix Suns.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know, just following him over the years and being buddies with him, just trying to pick up some of the things that the pros are doing, really bringing the science into it. So, I don't know, I still love jumping and running and moving, and I think what I wanted to do ultimately was when I have kids and they're running around and wanting to play sports, that I could get out there and run around with them.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my goal. But also, I don't know, man, I love being strong. I love being yoked. I think my wife roll her eyes all the time. I'm like, hey, babe, do I look yoked today? And she's just like rolling her eyes. That's my I don't know. I love movement. I think for me, it's more mental health, honestly, than physical.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, it helps diabetes.
Yeah. I like lifting heavy weights because I space out, especially when I do like CrossFit work. I'm mainly like a CrossFit guy. So like I'll do CrossFit work. So I kind of like when I'm working out, I'll space out, or like, like pretty much like on my knees, just like struggling. I just know to keep on going. I know to try to push myself, because obviously I want to be able to sit on the toilet when I'm like 70 years old, or like, be able to like, play lacrosse with my son because he's 5, or even my daughter too. So that's the main thing, is just to stay in shape for pretty much for them. And obviously for me too, because I don't want to be, God forbid, like anybody's listening, but dad bod, like I can't do that. Like I always want to like push myself to see how far I can go, even being at a guy at 41 years old right now.
That motivates me too. I'm pretty vain. I like to wear designer clothes too. So I like to, I got to be a little bit leaner.
Yep.
But for me, the vanity is more like performance based. So when I go out and I play with the young bucks, playing basketball, and
Yep.
the guys at the highest level, I like to be out there competing. In a lot of ways, I'm definitely not the player I used to be. My body is worn down. I've had 2 ankle surgeries. I'm older. I'm slower. I don't play as much anymore. I sit down a lot for my job, but I like to get out there and be able to compete.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember playing against like old vets, I say old now, but like veterans like me who you could tell they were good and they like really knew how to play, but they just weren't physically there anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I am, where I'm out there at the end of the game for the best team in the championship in the men's league still. And that makes me, that gives me joy. I'm like, okay, there aren't that many spots, and I just want to keep that spot. That's kind of the reason why I work out and train. And, the thing for me too is trying to stay healthy.
Yeah.
A big thing, even in COVID, is I'm a guy that does a lot of things. If I'm the hardest working guy in diabetes, I've got to be available.
Mm-hmm.
And so that for me means I need to be healthy. My mind needs to be right. I can't be sick. I've got to be able to move. And, that's what I really try to, when I'm doing my self-talk, and I'm like, okay, are we going to get up and work out today? And what are we going to do? How do we feel?
Mm-hmm.
I want to be available.
Yeah. So I have a feeling I'm getting your vibe of like, if you're on the Peloton, I know you're trying to be number 1 at the whole time during the Peloton race, right?
It's hard, man, because like that competitiveness will bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
I think like I rode with one of my college buddies who was the best player of my senior year, and he and his wife just got a Peloton, and we did the buddy ride, and both of us like were afterwards. He beat me by like 12 points, and it was my PR for like a 30-minute ride, and I was dead. Like, both of us. He texted me the next morning. He's like, bro, I can't walk. So I think it's you're right. I'm a degenerate competitor, but also like I'm a big dude, and big guys have long levers, and I'm not maybe the best to ride a bike, especially a stationary one. So I'm a little bit easier on myself. I try to, over the past few years, I try to soften my edges, try to be a little bit nicer to myself. And for me, it's about being available. If I crush myself on one day and I can't move the next, that's a net loss for me. I'd rather be able to maybe take it to 75, 80% and still be able to go the next day. I wear the Whoop tracker has been a big game changer for me, tracking my recovery, hydration. I don't know. That's been a cool thing as a person with diabetes. When you're measuring so much of the data that goes into your body, I want to know how that affects my overall wellness. And, I've already got diabetes. I've pretty much got that down, but there's other stuff that, other complications. People don't like to talk about those a lot, but, heart disease, high blood pressure, these other things that are chronic illnesses that are associated with diabetes in many cases, even when you have good control. So I think I try to make my decisions today for myself 30 years from now. Kind of like you said, you want to be able to sit on the toilet by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your diet like now, since you said you want to be more healthier?
Well, like, for example, I just had a splurge kind of meal, like late at the end of the week. So I had a Bonza pizza, which is like a chickpea crust or cauliflower. Yeah. Chickpea crust pizza. Yeah. So I've experimented a lot more with plant-based and vegan substitutes this year for the first time. I love meat. I love red meat. I love a good steak, medium rare. Don't overcook it. Don't you dare. And I'm from Texas. I love high-fat fried foods.
Yep.
I love food, but for me, I've learned in the Mastering Diabetes guys, at first, when I encountered kind of Robbie and Cyrus, I was like, "Well, this is not for me. Like, I'm not gonna ever do this. This is like doesn't really click with me. It's a good idea, but I'm not into it." And now I'm putting like 10 pieces of fruit in my salad, and it's pretty incredible the difference that I'm able to see in the way your body responds to foods. So anyway, all this is a lot of information and kind of a vomit at the mouth. But the thing that I've noticed for me, the fewer processed foods I eat, the better my blood sugars are, the better my energy is, the better my physical fitness is. That's so for me, it's not necessarily like don't eat meat, only eat fruit or vegetables or whatever. More fresh, whole foods, the better. If I'm eating a lot of fast food or getting takeout from restaurants, even if they're nice restaurants, there's more preservatives, there's bad oils. Like there's things in there that aren't in the foods that I could cook at home. And so when I'm cooking at home and I'm disciplined, that's when I feel the best.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine. She worked at the hospital I worked at, and I had her on the podcast. Her thing was, if your grandmother doesn't know what that is, don't eat it. So I was like, oh, okay, all right. I mean, I'll take that. I mean, that's perfect because I mean, granted, back in the day they used lard to layers food up and stuff like that. But I mean, that's awesome. If they don't know what it is, then don't eat it.
Well, and I think there's a lot of food, a lot of ingredients disguised as other things. They like, oh, it's not sugar, but then there's, all of these bad ingredients in there. Or, low fat, but it's like, high trans fat or, bad additives.
Yeah.
Something, when I was growing up, my mom wouldn't let us eat trans fat, like polysaturated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any of those, like she would look at the ingredients, and that was like she was like an early adopter of like really trying to understand what was in the food we were eating. So, I don't have, I was very fortunate to have a good food foundation of like what's good for me and what's not. And that doesn't mean I always get it right. But when I'm, really dialed in, and the more disciplined I am, and the more I think ahead, and the better choices I make with food, from like a whole ingredients perspective, just like you said, like if your grandma doesn't know what it is, don't eat it. When I'm eating greens and potatoes and, good clean meats and, or some vegan substitutes or fruits or whatever have you, I feel better.
Nice. Very cool. So you said it before, you're the hardest working diabetic in the community, which I think you are. So, So how do you handle training, and then obviously you said it before, like don't burn yourself out, but you have a podcast, you have a marketing company, you're a speaker. So how do you even get time to even do a workout?
Man, Great question. So, I identify as an achiever. That's the language that I know. I'm so extra. I have 2 therapists, dude. And I think, a lot of the self-talk that I have behind the scenes in my brain and my heart is like, I want to believe that I am capable of whatever it is that I want. Or if there's something that I want, that I am capable of doing it. I think a lot of that comes from my mom. She's the same way. And a lot of times my will exceeds my skill. That's the kind of basketball player I was. I just played hard and, tried to get every edge that I could where I could. So, somebody asked me today, like, when do you sleep? And it's like, interestingly enough, and now I know this because of my whoop, I sleep now more than I ever have. And I think that just is because, I am a super nonfiction nerd. So I've read like all the time management books, all the entrepreneurial books, whatever. And I've put a lot of things into practice to where I structured my life to focus on my priorities. And, we all have to work. We live in the U.S. and work is a big part of our culture and identity. And I've been very fortunate to have the right business partner who thinks we think about things the same way. We have shared values, and we wanted to build a company that we wanted to work for. And neither one of us live to work; we work to live. So we try to keep that balance. We work with amazing. I have amazing employees. I have amazing clients. And I think that's all by design. On the diabetes side, this is my passion project. Yes, it's a company. Yes, there are sponsored deals and things, but my goal from day one was to help one person. Some days that person is me. And I think even, recently, as I had kind of gotten a little bit busy with podcasts and away from podcasts and had kind of deprioritized those, but then recently I talked to somebody and it filled my cup up so much with energy. And, meeting people with diabetes was something I didn't allow myself to do for the first 10 years I was diagnosed. And I didn't know what I was missing out on. Yeah. And some of my closest friends now have diabetes. So, I think that's, I used to be the king of compartmentalization, and I would keep all these separate, and I would keep all the balls juggled up in the air. And now I'm much more comfortable kind of blending them together. And that's led me to a much more balanced place where I just feel more comfortable making decisions for myself. I think, getting married, I think, and getting a little older also has helped me with that. But, being the hardest working guy in diabetes, that's kind of a funny joke punchline for me. But I also was I look at guys like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yeah. This guy's not perfect. He doesn't always do or say the right thing. His career has been very different, but he's a guy who most people like and does, most of the stuff he does is good, and he works hard. And what's the one thing that is so consistent about him? He's in the gym. He's an athlete. And I think for me, watching The Last Dance, you see behind me, there's Michael Jordan stuff that I've had this stuff since I was 6 years old. It's been part of my life. I identify with that mindset and it shaped so much of who I am that I was like, you know what? I'm an athlete first. I'm going to own that. And I'm going to not hide that. And so that's why I lift. That's why I work out. Because that's when I feel the most like myself. Nice. And entrepreneurialism, I didn't know that was going to be something that I wanted to do, but it is. And I love it. I think it's, every day can be different. It can be wildly challenging. Even earlier this year, a lot of days looking in the mirror, is this really what I want to do? Is this these people's livelihoods and families are my responsibility? And it was scary, but it's what I love to do. I'm very fortunate that I've built with the people alongside me and my support system, built a life that I love, and it gets me out of bed every day.
Yeah, awesome. Well, congratulations on the marriage too. I forgot to tell you that earlier.
Thanks, man. Got the ring. Getting used to it. Haven't quite gotten used to the ring yet.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't worn my ring in a while because I only take it out when we go out to dates because I don't know because I worked in a hospital. I've worked in roofing, and that's the last thing I need is the ring to get stuck and just rip my finger right off. So that's that's why I only wear it on dates and stuff. So, but it's funny. My wife will look at me when we go out, and she's like, "You wearing your ring?" And I'm like, sometimes I don't by accident. I'm like, crap, I forgot. I'm sorry. And then sometimes I'll ask her, "You wearing your ring?" No. I'm like, okay. I mean, but we still know it's Actually, my wife made a joke about we went to Thanksgiving, and I'm like, "Oh, are you wearing your ring?" She's like, "No, my parents already paid for our wedding, so they know we're married." So I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, you don't have to prove it to them at least. Yeah,
Yeah.
so my ring actually, I always knew I wanted a gold, like a just traditional wedding band. This is a weird aside, but like, my mom allowed me to wear my dad's wedding ring, so I got it resized for me. He passed away a couple years ago, but yeah, so that's my ring is a little bit of my. It reminds me of him too. It's like because I look down and it's like, oh, I don't really recognize this guy with the gold ring.
Yeah, yeah. So have people been asking you like when you're having kids or whatever like that immediately after you got married?
Because of COVID and like being away from people, I haven't had a ton of that. I
Yeah.
think we've talked about it. I want kids, and so does my wife. So we're just trying to make sure we do it on our own timeline. And
Yeah.
right now we have 2 Shibas and a cat, and that is well enough for us.
Yeah, like
any Shiba Inu listeners out there, but they're a handful.
yeah. So like when we got married, like immediately the first week after we got married, everyone was like asking like when are we having kids, and it was like super annoying. I'm like just shut up, just like let me do my thing, like we'll see what happens, and who knows. But I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I'm excited, man. I think being a father is like going to be that's an adventure that I've not done, and I'm excited to. I think hopefully that'll be like my greatest adventure. That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, they're the best. Like, there's a book you need to get once you have kids. It's called "Dude, You're Gonna Be a Dad," and it tells you everything. Like, it's some guy from Atlanta that talks about his experience and what to expect. So anyway. So great book to look into. So, but
Okay.
You talked earlier about like you have like kind of almost like you're teaming up with companies like Medtronic, Beyond like Type 1, and then there was a supplement company. What was it called?
Yeah, Type 0.
Yeah, that's it. So how did you like when you were trying to like meet and talk to other people like for working with them? How did you go about, did you like study him or like say, hey, this might not be a good fit for me or this might be a good fit? So how did you go about picking the right one for you?
That's a really good question because I think, I didn't know what I was getting into early on. I'd love to say that I had this design. I love doing this. I can't take credit for, I'm just grateful that so many folks have followed along and have, believed in me and kind of bought into what I'm doing. And so, yeah, I think, with Medtronic, I wore a Medtronic pump. That was the only really, at the time, even when I started the podcast, I didn't know anything about Dexcom or any other technologies. I sort of just knew what I knew. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe Medtronic Diabetes has like social media. So I, looked them up and was like, okay, well, I could probably just post about it. So I made some posts, and over the years, they after a while, they asked me to be part of the ambassador program, which I don't know, I was all about, and was just part of, being with a group of Medtronic ambassadors. And over the years, like some opportunities came up to be in photo shoots, and when the 670G came out, they wanted me to dunk with it on. And and so I went to LA, and at the time I was actually doing a over-the-counter T1D challenge, which is something I did at the beginning of 2018, where I lived on R and N, like over-the-counter insulin for a month. So the funny subtext is like my blood sugar was like super high, out of control, like felt terrible that morning.
Yeah.
Because NPH and R are just a little bit tough to live with. And but I managed to get through the shoot, and I dunked it or whatever. I think we did 32 takes of the dunk, and I only missed one, so I felt good about that. And I don't know. I just for me, it comes back to with Medtronic, like dance with the ones that brung you. And that's a saying that my old man used to say a lot. It was like a very Southern thing, probably in Atlanta you've heard that. But they've been very supportive of me, and since the beginning. And I know them. I love the team that I work with, and so. As things have grown, and we did the big Express thing this summer, I was got to be featured in Express.com and their menswear magazine, and it just was the right time to maybe take a step forward. And so now I'm have a deeper partnership in sort of a spokesperson role for Medtronic, which is cool. And I don't know, like on the nonprofit side, Beyond Type 1 and JDRF was there when I was diagnosed. They were the only organization I knew about, so. when I wanted to get more involved, I went to my local chapter, and I've been very involved with them over the years, and now on the board here in Dallas. And with Beyond Type 1, very similar, just got introduced, did a couple like articles, and got to know that group. And, I think you never know that, you're going to be criticized for your relationships with those types of companies initially. And, maybe I would have, if I had known what I know now, if I had known then, maybe I would have asked different questions, or I would have gotten clarity on some things. But ultimately, I think like shared values align with like trying to help people with diabetes. Like, and that's what I ask myself now, whenever any sort of opportunity comes in, whether it's like the coolest, biggest thing, or like very small, like, or take a lot of time and be like a volunteer thing, is the question I ask is, would I have been excited about this on day one of like when I started this journey? And if the answer is yes, I do it. And because, you never know, and this is a great like note for all of your listeners with diabetes, is you never know when your story is going to hit somebody the right way.
Yep.
And it could make a huge difference in their life. So, I think I evaluate partnerships based on the fit. I never rep companies that I don't use. And I mean, that's an easy thing to do. I like stuff, so I'll try it out. But I post a lot about like this company called Yellow Label that makes hoodies that I like. I'm wearing one right now.
Yeah.
And I wear my Medtronic pump, and I love it. And I use the Type 0 pre-workout because John Jensen reached out. He's a Type 1 entrepreneur. He and I hit it off. I love the product, and it doesn't spike my blood sugar, and it doesn't keep me up at night or make my skin crawl. Like I'm sure you've been through your fair share of crazy pre-workouts.
Yeah. I have a long story, but we'll talk about that off air. But
okay. But like, and companies like Real Good Foods who, make products that are accessible for people with diabetes. And again, just like, it's all a chemistry check, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you're meeting people, like, do we have shared values? Do they value me and my time and what I bring to the table, and vice versa? And from there, I mean, I think there's, like I said, I live a really blessed, fortunate life that I work with people on all different fronts who I really enjoy, and I, have a shared respect and value for.
Nice. So when you actually go to like the JDRF like conferences or whatnot, do you get like a bunch of people like coming up to you to take pictures with you, and what is that like to you? Is like, are you thinking like, wow, these people like really like want to take pictures with me? Like what, like, I'm just a regular guy with like a diabetes and stuff like that. Like what goes through your mind when you have like little fans of yours that want to take pictures with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like that. I forget sometimes because I'm just a pretty normal guy. But at the same time, like, I know I'm there. I'm in the program. I love meeting people with diabetes, like kids, parents. I've had some conversations at those events, like, after the pictures and people talk, we share the Instagram stories or whatever. Like, those things are great. But the ones where somebody waits in line to talk to you and they have a real problem or a real question about their kid, or they have a question about their coach, or they have a question about how to prepare for a track meet or whatever. And they want, like, those moments, like, man, I'd shake hands and take a million pictures just to get to one of those.
Yeah.
Because those are, I know if I was in their shoes and they had access to somebody like me who's willing to talk about those things, would have really helped. So I don't know, man, I'm just immensely grateful. And I think, like, when I have conversations like that, I'll go to an event, in pre-COVID times, and I'd be there for, I fly in the night before, 7 a.m. I'm there till noon, and then I leave out, and I've spoken probably 2 times, I've met 100 people, and I get back to the gate at the airport, and I just sit down and I kind of like decompress, and I just feel so full. I don't know, those things are, for me, just to be able to add any amount of ray of sunshine to a life with diabetes, man, I'd run through a brick wall for that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, man. It's I feel blessed. I'm fortunate. Like, of course, I'll take a picture with you. Why not?
Yeah.
It's goofy. Most of them don't. The weird ones, though, when people don't tag me in them, like, what are they doing with them? Do they save them or they print them out? I don't know. It's very strange.
Well, they probably put it on their wall, like, Hall of Fame of diabetics or something like that. So
I'd love to see that. I don't know. Those ones are the ones that don't get posted are always the strange ones.
Yeah. So we're almost getting towards the end. So a couple quick questions. So do you have any goals? I mean, granted, it's like you get a month left before the new year. But I know you were talking about like doing a I think it was you were trying to do a 360 dunk. Was it? Was that?
Yeah, I was trying to dunk between the legs.
Oh, that's it. That's it. Yeah, yeah. So do you have any goals for like next year that you want to achieve, like non-diabetic, diabetic related, or even fitness wise?
Yeah, this is I'm a creature of habit, like a cyclical. I operate like cyclically. So at this time of year, I typically take inventory of where we are,
Yep.
Or where I am at the end of the year, and I get into like that planning phase, and I try to set myself some goals. One of the things, like with the whoop strap, I was like, I want to see what a year's worth of data looks like. So my year will be up like in the first week of January. I think fitness wise, basketball just keeps tugging me. I would love to, maybe get in shape for do like a 6-week camp of some kind and like go and do a tryout and just like see, for some press, and see if I can maybe inspire some people to believe in themselves a little bit more. I think I could probably do that without my body falling apart. But I think for me, I really want to go on a honeymoon. My wife and I have not gotten a chance to do that. I'd love to take a month and just be gone.
Yep.
So I don't know if I'll get to do that yet, but if the opportunity presents itself, that's something that, just to celebrate our life together and really kind of kick that off. And I think, when you start to think about kids and things like that, you're giving up a lot of your time, a lot of energy, because that person needs you.
Yep.
So I don't know, maybe just sort of celebrating the end of the young, solo couple chapter maybe, and start thinking about kids. But I don't know. I'm trying to do some YouTube stuff. I'm trying to get more consistent there. And I just enrolled in a course to try to teach me some more online business stuff. So always trying to learn and grow and, keep refining myself. I think that's the interesting thing is, 2 years ago, my New Year's resolution was to go to the dentist. And because I hadn't been in a few years. And it took me a while to get there, but I finally did. And, as of this month, I won't have to go more often. My goal is finally accomplished. I have healthy teeth and I'm in good shape.
Yep.
So it's I don't know. I believe in small goals. And I think for me, I just want to be a little bit kinder to myself, a little bit more attentive and present with my wife, and, just be a better leader. And I think that's where, accountability comes into that. Be a better man, be a better leader. And I think when I do that, when I double down on being a better leader and really pouring into others, that's how I really get a lot of value for myself out of that. And I see other people succeed. That just, I don't know, brings me all kinds of joy. So that's, I don't know, that's a great question. I haven't really thought too much about it, but yeah, I don't know. I'm going to do one of those things. Whether the between the legs dunk happens for me or not, we're really getting close to it being too late. But I got the home gym now. I'm doing a lot of single leg Bulgarian squats. So we're gonna try. We're gonna get there.
Nice. Yeah. My so when I played college basketball for a while, like just a little bit, and my patent dunk was called the Lennon Deluxe, where what I would do is I'd start at the 3-point line, I throw it up in the air, catch it, and I'd do a reverse dunk, but I'd bring the ball pretty much all the way down to my feet, like a Harold Miner. And if anybody doesn't know, that's a former NBA player, and they just throw it right in there. So and that was my move. So
that's a pretty damn good dunk. One of my best in-game dunks was in a pro-am in Denver after I graduated. I was at the bounciest of my life, and I went and did the touch to the Dominique kind of between the legs tomahawk, double tomahawk reverse, and almost hit my head on the rim. It was pretty awesome. I had one of my buddies who was a little bit older than me, and he was a physical therapist, was like, "Dude, you need to calm down out here, man. You're gonna get somebody hurt out here trying to do this." So it was just a fun moment. Yeah, I don't fly like that anymore though. I got to really dig in, and if I'm gonna squeak one of those between the legs dunks in.
Yeah, I can't even. I haven't played basketball in years, so I can't even imagine what I probably can barely even get to the rims because I just don't jump.
You're a strong guy though. I've seen you deadlift and stuff. I bet you could do it.
I don't know. We'll see. Who knows? But all right. So the other one is, what is your favorite book, nonfiction or fiction?
Oh man. Okay. So fiction favorite books, and so I'm googling here. I'm looking at not Googling rather. So in my notes here, one of my favorite, I think, when I was playing with the Globetrotters, one of the things that I really wanted to do was maximize my travel time to learn. Because I was like, I'm never going to have this much time in my life.
Yeah.
Let's like dig in. So I read a lot of books, and there's a blog on diabetics doing things called the Rob Howe EMBA, electronic MBA. And in there are a bunch of books that I've read that I think are just really good for anybody who's interested in entrepreneurship or business or marketing or whatever. But I'd say the book that really stands out to me, and the first thing that came to my mind is the one I'm going to go with, and that's Tim Ferriss's Tools of Titans. And I remember reading that right when I started my business, and just hearing from all these like incredible achievers and like the things that they did, whether it's like it's told in 3 parts: health, wealth, and wisdom. And I just found it really, I don't know, it was really cool to hear. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger wrote the introduction, and I don't know, it was very good, and I would highly recommend it. The best business book that I would recommend for anybody who's interested in marketing is the 22 Immutable Principles of Marketing. It's a little bit old, it's a little bit dated, but I read that when I was on tour with the Trotters, and it changed my career. And then I'm trying to think, fiction-wise, I love like Airport Trash, like Page Turner, James Patterson.
Yep.
Like, those are my books, man. But there's this book I read when I was a kid that always stuck out, and it's a little bit like of a fantasy book, and it's called The Great and Terrible Quest. And it is, if you have kids, it'd be a great like bedtime story to read to them, kind of a knight and a young kid story. And it has a poem in it that I still, I don't remember the whole thing, but I remember the crux of it. It's like a great page turner and a twist. A really good story. So The Great and Terrible Quest is probably my favorite fiction book.
Okay, awesome. Now, two other questions. So the most important one is, what would you tell a new person that just recently got diagnosed as a diabetic what to expect for the rest of their life?
Well, diabetes is what I was thinking, because, I think there's so much rhetoric in the outset of diabetes, of a cure. I don't know how much of there is today still, but my experience was like, hey, don't worry, in 20 years, this is going to be cured. And like, hands down. And I've heard many people mention the same thing. What I would say is not that. Because if you leave the possibility for that, great. I'd love to be surprised.
Yeah.
I would love to be surprised. But I would say, first of all, make a friend with diabetes. Embrace and find a way to accept yourself as you are. Because this is not going away.
Yep.
And the only thing that you have to do is never give up. Because diabetes has taken people down. And it will continue to do so. So I would say, rely on the strength of your friends and your community and your family if you can. Get connected, reach out to somebody, and just know that, it may look really cool what Rob Howe and other people and what Thomas is doing on Instagram, but we have our bad days too. And some days we have low blood sugars that keep us from getting out of bed or make us real sweaty in workouts and make us have to like eat Skittles on the floor at the gym, and normalize some of that struggle. And I think life is a struggle. Angela Davis's book, Freedom is a Constant Struggle. I think freedom with diabetes is a constant struggle.
Yeah.
And normalizing that conversation is super important. So I would say, hey, you know what? This is going to be hard. That's okay. You can do it. Don't give up.
Yeah. Awesome. And where can people reach out to you? Obviously, you're pretty, vocal on social media. Where can people reach out to you if they have a question about anything?
I am very online. So just Google Rob Howe Diabetes. You'll find me. But diabeticsdoingthings.com, Rob Howe 21 on Instagram, Diabetics Doing Things on Instagram. I'm here. I'm here to lend a ear. If you, people message me crazy stuff, and sometimes I'm like, "Whoa, this is crazy." But if you're cool, I'll respond to you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much for doing this podcast. I really do appreciate it, and thank you for the time that you actually gave me for this. It truly means a lot to me.
Yeah, dude. I'm glad that we made this happen. Thank you for asking. And man, I'm proud to see the growth, dude. It's only been 5 years, and you're already podcasting all over the place, doing all of it. I love it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you.